Yes, we are recording.
Excellent. Well, welcome everyone. We apologize for the short delay. This is our first time using the NCSD YouTube live option. It is hopefully an easier form for many of you to watch our meeting. Super excited to have all of you here at this time. It's July 30th. This is our special meeting. We will start with our agenda item, which is on real estate. I will pass it over to our superintendent, Utterback.
Good evening, members of the community, our board, and district staff joining us tonight. Our first agenda item tonight is an Amendment 3 proposal on the sale of surplus property for property at 172nd Avenue. My recommendation is tonight is that the board find that the change of the amendment is not material and to authorize the extension to August 13th, 2020, which is 14 days, of the buyer's due diligence Amendment 3 to the purchase and sale of property for the surplus property located at 14721 Southeast 172nd Avenue in Happy Valley.
Excellent, thank you, Matt. I'll open the floor for a motion.
Move approval of superintendent's recommendation to extend the offer period to August 13th. I guess end of day.
It's the 14th.
Oh, I apologize. August 14th.
Here the approval to extend the date to August 14th. Do you have a second?
McVeigh, second.
Excellent. I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? And I will do a roll call. So Director Strado, any discussion?
No.
Director McVeigh?
No.
Director Benaloga?
No.
Director Way?
No.
Director Bauer?
No discussion.
Okay, no discussion from myself either. We will move to our votes. I will also do a roll call for that. So yay or nay, Director Strado?
Aye.
Director McVeigh?
Aye.
Director Benaloga?
Aye.
Director Way?
Aye.
Director Bauer?
Aye.
There you go. And myself is also an aye. So it's unanimous. We will give that extension. Thank you, Superintendent. Next on the agenda, of course, is our also popular topic, and that's the Ready Schools Safe Learner 2021 report. And I must say before you give the report, Superintendent Utterback, that you guys have been working tirelessly and just super excited about the work that you guys are putting together. And I know that we can't make everyone happy, but we are trying our darndest. So thank you in advance for the work you guys have done. I'll pass it over to our superintendent.
Thank you, Chair Ford, for that. Tonight we have what I'm guessing will be a fairly lengthy work session with you. This is a discussion item tonight. And let me get started with some opening comments. What you have in your board packet is the superintendent's recommendation that for the 2020-21 school year, that the North Clackamas schools will open under the comprehensive distance learning model through at least November 10th of 2020, and then asking for some additional authorizations to the superintendent. And there are 4 of those. The first is to transition to the hybrid learning educational delivery model after consultation with you, the board, with state education officials, and in the consideration of the public health related metrics that were distributed by local health officials earlier this week. Looking for the authorization to establish a temporary one school year virtual online program. Looking for authorization to temporarily adjust the adopted district calendars and seek retroactive board approval within 30 days of any adjustments. We'll talk about that, the reasons behind that in a few moments. And finally, to establish temporary physical distancing and other public health related requirements on school district property. So that's the discussion, the recommendation coming forward. And we'll structure this format tonight under the following agenda items. So I want to talk a little bit about the timelines that we're working within. We're going to talk about kind of the district direction and some guiding principles and guiding documents for us. We want to review the health metrics that have been outlined by state officials. Dive more deeply into the instructional models. We have some more detail to share with you tonight. Again, discuss some of the operational planning protocols and practices that we're working on, and then conclude with some further questions and answers. So as we do each of these, I will stop. I think there's about 4 sections here, and we'll stop after each section and provide the opportunities for the board to ask questions at the end of each section, and I'll kind of help facilitate that tonight.
Perfect. So just to make sure that we're all on the same page regarding current planning, as you recall, our last meeting, we shared with you a lot of the efforts that have gone in to collect stakeholder feedback from our students, our parents, and our staff. And that last thought exchange concluded on July 21st. And we're using that feedback, and you're going to hear about how we're using that feedback in our planning processes. We're here tonight with a board update. Earlier today, we held 3 sessions for our staff. Had nearly 700 people participate in some updates with our staff that we did today. Next week is a big week in the school district. We will continue to share our revised proposals and details with our staff, as well as our parents. And then on August 5th, next Wednesday at midnight, we're asking our parents to have made a decision on the educational model that they would like their students to be in next year. The week of August 10th, the following week, we will have needed to have submitted our plans to the Clackamas County Public Health Department. That will be followed later that week on Thursday, August 13th, with another board meeting, which again, we will spend probably considerable time updating the board on where we are with reopening schools. By Saturday of that week, we must have submitted our plans to the Oregon Department of Education. And then a couple weeks later, September 8th and 9th are our identified first days of school on our school calendars. Do not see those dates changing, but I think what will change is what that first week of school will look like. It's going to be a gradual rollout, and that first week will provide opportunities for staff to connect with students in small groups, potentially individually, to make sure our students and families have the necessary technology that they need, perhaps do some training for our parents and students on that technology, provide some additional time for professional development for our staff. So that week, we will have contact with our students and our parents, but it will look different than it has in the past. And then we will probably dive deeply into then that comprehensive distance learning and get the online program up and running there on the week of September 14th, I think. So that's where we are with regards to current planning. And all of that planning is being done, right, under the umbrella of some guiding district documents and district beliefs. And I know as a board, you're very familiar with our district direction, really that district vision, which is about preparing graduates who are inspired and empowered to strengthen the quality of life in our local and global communities. And in order for us to achieve that direction, that vision, we really work hard to make decisions using a district equity lens. And when we use that equity lens, we're asking ourselves questions such as what systems of oppression might exist within the situation that we're currently working in. We're looking at who's going to be negatively or positively impacted by our decisions. Is our decisions going to ignore or make worse existing disparities or produce other unintended consequences? Are we including those that are going to be affected by our decisions in the process, and looking at the decisions that we're going to make, are they sustainable over time?
So when we use that equity lens in combination with our strategic plan, and within our strategic plan, we have 5 guiding principles. We sometimes refer to them as our values. And our values are equity, engagement, care, integrity, and excellence. And as a superintendent, I'm really proud that we've identified those. I think they speak to who we are as a school system and what we're striving to achieve as a school system. In addition to that, as we address this particular issue of reopening schools within the midst of a pandemic, we have also been guided by some thoughts that Tiffany Shireman, our Chief of Staff, will share with you.
Good evening, all. Central to North Clackamas School District's strategic plan and mission is a high quality education and the academic progress of every student. As North Clackamas initiated its emergency planning back in March, we focused strongly on the 3 guiding thoughts here in determining actions to take. And the same guiding thoughts have stayed central to our planning around the opening of the 2020-2021 school year. First, we're committed to low rates of COVID-19 virus transmission in the community. We are a large employer and a large educational institution when you consider over 2,000 employees and 17,000 students and their families. We recognize our role in public health in a community and that we need to be cognizant of the whole community's transmission rate. We also have worked to coordinate our actions to underscore safety and care for people, for humans, for life. And we've now are focused strongly also on standing ready with multiple educational delivery models. We recognize that the educational delivery models that have served us for the last few years, given the current health and community needs, we're going to need to be looking at these other models. So since the time of when we started implementing these guiding thoughts and our planning around COVID-19 and reopening schools, since that time, the Oregon Department of Education, the Oregon Health Authority, our partners there at the state in our state government, have helped to guide our actions also. You'll notice here there are 3 documents. Last time we spoke, there were 2. The Ready Schools, Safe Learners Guidance, updated as recently as yesterday, is here. Most recently, we have seen some changes. For instance, if we are serving students in in-person learning, there's a requirement now for face coverings for students as young as kindergarten. We now know more about the cohorting requirements if we are in-person learning this school year, that cohorts need to be 100 or less. We also know more about the instructional day minutes requirements. So these are some of the things that have emerged since the last time we were together. The other thing that has emerged is the 3rd document here on the far right of your screen. And this document has come available this week and is what was released by the governor in her press conference earlier this week around health metrics, public health metrics that we will watch closely and I'll speak about here in a few minutes. One of the other pieces that informs our thinking around the reopening and public health is that the science and study of COVID-19 continues to evolve. As we live with COVID-19 as a global community, we learn more. And there are 3 pieces of information that I want to bring forward here. The first is a study that talks about even with protective measures, reopening schools to in-person instruction will cause significant growth of the epidemic. I want to be clear that we've learned this from other countries who have reopened school to in-person instruction. The second is a study that found that people ages 10 to 19 can spread the virus at least as well as adults do. And while children younger than 10 transmit to others much less than adults do, the risk is not zero. So I want to be clear about the kinds of things people hear, and this is informing our thinking and our work. The third here is that in the United States, there are over 3.3 million adults over age 65 living in multi-generational homes with at least one school-aged child. And we know those over 65 are particularly at risk with COVID-19. Further, the study says that families of color live in these multi-generational homes more frequently than families who are white. And we have an obligation as a school district and as a member of the community to consider those who are most at risk during this public health crisis. And also consider the long-standing systemic health and societal inequalities that have led to disproportionate numbers of people of color contracting COVID-19 and dying from COVID-19. It's our responsibility to be aware and to speak openly about that. I mentioned earlier that the third piece of guidance that we've been reviewing and working with this week is the Oregon Health Authority's metrics on COVID-19. And what was released here, this document that was released and is available online, discusses specific metrics that now are in place in order for a school district to consider going back to in-person instruction. These metrics have to be in place. This is a statewide requirement for public and private schools. The metrics include some data pieces at the county level and at the state level. So specifically, in order to engage in any in-person instruction with students, the case rate in the county needs to be at or less 10 cases per 100,000 in the preceding 7 days. And the test positivity rates, the rates at which people test positive when tested for COVID, needs to be less than or equal to 5% in the preceding week. Also, the state metric for test positivity needs to be less than or equal to 5% in the preceding week. So I point these numbers out, but it's most helpful if you have some kind of a recent reference. And for recent reference, Clackamas County has been at approximately 34 cases. So 34 cases per 100,000 population for the week that ended July 25. And test positivity has hovered at 3.7 to 4% in the past week, the week ending July 25, I should say. State has hovered just above the 5% for the week ending July 25. It's important to know there are two numbers there that are highlighted in yellow. And those two that are highlighted in yellow, while those are the requirements to move to in-person instruction, with a case rate less than 30, so if that number was less than 30 in the county, and the second number there highlighted in yellow, if that was less than 5, a school district could very cautiously and planfully proceed with in-person instruction for specific groups. And those groups were identified and prioritized in the government or in the governor's documents. At this moment, we don't meet that threshold, to be clear.
So I'd like to pause there and provide the opportunity for the board to ask any questions about our kind of guiding beliefs, principles, transmission of COVID-19 and the health metrics. Does the board have any questions? And as a reminder, I am presenting, I can't see anyone. And so Libra, I'm going to need your help.
I do have a question, but I think I saw Director Bauer unmute
Yeah,
herself.
so I see, if you guys know how to use the hand raise, please do that also. So I saw Director Bauer, Director McVeigh, and Director Way. So Director Bauer, what do you got?
Thank you. I heard you say, Tiffany, the word consider opening up. Could you talk just a little bit more about that? Because I think, you know, one thing we're hearing is that decision, and maybe you'll talk about that more, but people are, I think in the community, are concerned about when we do open back up and that decision. I know that the decision to have online, our leaders were one of the first in the state to decide to keep with online learning and not go back because they really care. We consider life really important, but I'll stop there.
And just to give it context, one of the 4 things that Superintendent Utterback has asked us to consider is the transition to hybrid after consultation with us. So that consideration would be one of the things that we need context for.
I guess to follow up though, we also, you have in the past, you considered staff, you considered the risk factors, you considered parent letters. So it's more than that, right? That goes into that decision.
Matt, would you like me to go ahead, or would you like me to?
Go ahead, Tiffany.
All right. A couple of thoughts. The first piece is, until earlier this week, the state of Oregon's stance was it was the school district's decision to determine if they would be, if students would be in-person learning or if they would be comprehensive distance learning. And at that point, it was soup to nuts around the school or around the state in terms of where people were proceeding and how they were proceeding. So the issue of these metrics at least give us what I would consider is kind of that thumbnail. What are some standard pieces of data that we will look at, that people will look at in other counties to help guide their decision making. What happens when we hit some of the metrics, or when we hit the metrics that would say that a school district could consider moving into in-person school, we'll be having the exact same conversation we have had over the last six weeks or so around what are the hospitalization, and there's other data that we would be interested in. What are the hospitalization rates? What is our current public health what are our current public health leaders saying currently? What are our families saying? What are your impressions? Where's our workforce readiness? What are our labor associations saying about readiness to return to in-class instruction? I don't see any situation where there'd be a flip of a switch that would, based on 3 numbers, a switch would flip. Matt, do you have anything to add?
I would agree with that, Tiffany. Thank you for that explanation. We are a school system that is prioritizing safety and care for our staff. As our chief of staff just identified, I don't think we're a system that makes rash decisions. We have been thoughtful and deliberate and careful in our decision making as we've gone through this pandemic, and we're going to continue to do that. And I think for our community, our staff, and our parents, right now, the recommendation is that we will be in comprehensive distance learning through that first week and a half of November. That is the end of our grading period. And I think initially right now, my thinking is to make decisions based upon those grading periods. What I don't want us to do is to create a system in which we go into in-person learning, and then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, we're back into comprehensive distance learning because the data has shifted. And so that data may shift here in a month to where we're below that 30 cases or fewer. per 100,000 population, but I will want to see that rate stay below 30 for a number of weeks, and making sure that the trend is continuing downward. So I think that Mitzi, I hope that helps answer your question. And I know that we have a lot of parents that are listening tonight as well. Our parents also need some consistency, and that is also one of the reasons for our November date, is to let parents know, here's where we're going to be for the first 2.5 months of the school year, and then we'll make a decision on what the next 2.5 months will look like.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Director
you.
McVeigh?
So just so I'm clear, there isn't a recommendation to have different cohorts have opportunities that the governor laid out, such K through 2 or SPED, should we get below these rates of transmissions or infections, where we could bring them back on campus?
Yeah, no recommendation now, Director McVeigh. Like I said, I think that we're going to need to see the trends truly seeing the trends going downward and holding and continuing to drop. There may be, some isolated cases where we get below that 30 rate, in which I'll come back and have a conversation with the board about. We think that we're okay, for example, doing some physical therapy with some of our students that need physical therapy. Would we be okay bringing in one student and a family at a time to do a special education assessment? Would we maybe be okay bringing in 1 or 2 students to do an authentic assessment in a CTE course? But I would say any large scale, numbers of students bring back like an entire grade, we're going to need to see, my recommendation to you would be we would need to have a conversation with the full board and really see that downward trend happening in this virus.
Thank you.
Director Way, I see you, Director Schradel. I see you. Director.
Yes. Thank you, Chair Ford. I just have one clarifying question. So I believe the last meeting that we had in a discussion with the board around this, my understanding was that there wasn't really a clear protocol around children having to wear masks in the schools. But now I'm hearing, Tiffany, in your update, that there is now that requirement if students were to return back to school. As early as kindergarten grades. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm opening up to the page just in case there's a follow-up question.
Okay.
So yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify on that because, again, I think my concern around that is just how do we, I think it's hard even in the adult population to, right, like enforce the mask wearing and all of that. And I just can imagine that could be another potential challenge that we would have to probably talk about as a district in terms of how do we enforce that, right, especially with 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. So just wanted to bring that up as a potential issue.
Thank you.
Director Way, Director Schradel.
Thank you. Just wanted to have clarity because I don't know if it was OHA or ODE that updated the mask guidelines. Were the mask guidelines also stated to say we can require, or is it to ask?
The wording is face coverings are now, this is from the Oregon Department of Education. And for those of you keeping score at home, it's page 24 in the Ready Schools document. Face coverings are now required for all students in grades kindergarten and above, along with all staff. Certain accommodations are noted in the guidance below, and then it goes on to some accommodations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have one question. So I definitely hear the kind of dynamic process that you guys want to use in considering the return. on this screen, I keep hearing you guys hearing the number 30. I'm trying to figure out where this 30 goes because I see 10 and 5. What is the 30?
Yep, great question. I'm glad you asked. Those two numbers that are in yellow, when they're at 10 and 15, or 10 and 5, 10 for the case rate and 5 for positivity, a school district can open the 5 down below. A school district can open to in-person instruction in whatever way the school district deems necessary or wanting to. It could be K-12, it can be 3 days a week, it can be 2 days a week, however. However, if those numbers are less than or equal to 30 and less than and equal to 5, if we get to that 30 place, then you could bring in some prioritized groups, some small group instruction, the groups that Matt spoke of, all the way up to bringing back kindergarten through 2nd grade. And the governor spoke strongly about considering kindergarten through 2nd grade as particularly critical both for families, for students to be in school, learning school structure, engaging in school, and for early literacy instruction. For many students, early literacy instruction will be difficult in their homes, right? Those initial pieces of literacy instruction. So the 30s coming in there because it's actually written in the guidance from the state as that is a place where you could consider bringing in groups. Is it 30?
Thank you for that clarity.
Sure, of course.
So with that, we'll move on to the next phase of our presentation. It's my pleasure to introduce Shay James, our Assistant Superintendent for Education, to talk a little bit about our student, parent, staff input and feedback, as well as details around the 2 models that we are proposing, and a little bit on instructional hours.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I want to start out by sharing that in order to inform our educational and instructional models this year, we've worked to provide a variety of avenues for students, parents, and staff to provide us information, their priorities, and feedback. Our directors continue to use feedback provided from the multiple sources to inform and drive our work with work groups on the delivery and instructional model designs, and I'll talk through that a little bit tonight. This feedback has come to us from a variety of sources, which have included Youth Truth Survey data with our students, family empathy interviews in which we have had personal phone calls with families, intentionally collecting information from our historically underrepresented and bilingual families, in addition to others. We have also utilized our thought exchange to receive feedback. And we have had multiple work sessions and work groups, which have included employee associations and representatives from a variety of stakeholders, which gives us a varied perspective when we need it. We continuously place these data points at the center of our work alongside of our equity lens in the planning process. So here on this slide, you see our educational delivery model that is depicted in a visual form. And we put this together to try to help our staff and students and families better understand some of the nuances of the models that we are currently planning for. However, it's important for me to point out that this was created before the new guidance document came out with the cohorting information and some additional details that are there. I just want to draw your attention to the top left-hand corner of this visual depiction, in which we talk about some foundational information around comprehensive distance learning. And I'm going to go into more details around that here shortly. When you move from the comprehensive distance learning, as you've heard folks talk about, we will move into a hybrid model, which you see below. And again, some of this information was created prior to the new guidance document that came out yesterday. And so there could be some changes to that, but I think it still gives folks a good idea of what we would be looking at. It's important for me to remind folks that we would stay in the comprehensive distance learning model through the end of the first quarter. And prior to the end of the first quarter, we would utilize all of the tools, safety metrics, and multiple measures, as you just heard our board and chief of staff and superintendent discuss earlier, and having assurance that we will not be moving into the hybrid model until it's determined safe to do so by all of the different components that are there. On the right-hand side of this visual is key foundational information around our third model that we are planning for, which is our North Clackamas School District online virtual program. And I'll go through details with that here shortly. I'm going to share information with you this evening on a little bit more details as I have shared, but I also want to let you know that not all of your questions are going to be answered, and we are working hard to answer those questions and make sure that families have what they need to make informed decisions. So here, this shows that we have formed 4 large work groups that often divide into smaller groups when appropriate. Sometimes they divide into groups based on content, and sometimes they divide into groups based on level, elementary, middle, and high school. But these are the work groups that are informing the work that we are doing. And the work teams are comprised of colleagues from NCEA, which is our Teachers Association group, OSEA, which is our Classified Association group. We also have administrators involved, district office staff, social worker representation, counselors, instructional coaches, engagement specialists, etc. And not limited to those folks that are involved in the work groups, but just wanted you to have an idea of what it looks like and how we're bringing in multiple perspectives to inform the work. The teams are attending to the essential requirements and recommendations from the Oregon Department of Education guidance documents that our chief of staff was sharing with earlier, in addition to best practices that we're using. And here on this chart, you see a small example of topics that each of these groups are addressing. So this is not an exhaustive list of what they're going, but what they're doing, but it gives you a bit of an idea of what they're looking at. Each group is led by a trained facilitator who is using essential questions, group norms, best practice research, the feedback from parents, students, and staff, and our equity lens. These groups are working to address the instructional and delivery model for many different components, and I want to give you a few additional examples of the work that they are tackling that's included in this, but not limited to. So planning for the continuation and providing services and language acquisition needs to our English language learners. Planning for accommodations and supports for our students with disabilities. And I do want to note here that the Oregon Department of Education is not coming out with the service model guidance for special education until August 11th. And so while we are doing our best to start planning and preparing for what the service model for our students with disability would look like, we will not have the official guidance until August 11th. And so keeping that in mind in terms of final decision making around what that looks like. We're also looking at strategies to best support various groups within our schools, such as our teen parents and our PACE program. We're looking at grading and assessment and the alignment of that to our priority standards. And another piece that I just want to point out is that we are looking at how to best support our families who would like to access partner support, such as our school-based health centers, mental health providers, etc. I know there was a question last time, will our school-based health centers be providing COVID testing? And so we're working to see what the options are around that and what our providers can do to support our families within all of this. What I will share is all of these work group components are being worked on for both educational models, all educational models, regardless of what choice families make. So one of our goals today is to answer as many questions as we can at this time and to help folks understand the difference between the comprehensive distance learning model and the North Clackamas School District virtual online program. So I'm going to share some foundational information with both and then key features of both programs. Here you can see this is some foundational information that's taken from the visual depiction that we showed earlier. And our comprehensive district model for all maintains that all students would access instruction and learn remotely. So that's comprehensive distance learning. They're all learning remotely. Currently, again, this would go at this time until the end of first quarter, at which we would look at all of the safety measures that we have talked about and all of the components that go in there to determine if we're going to continue with comprehensive distance learning or if we would move into the hybrid model. Under comprehensive distance learning, all students would be given a laptop if needed. And I want to point out again, as we shared last time, that this learning model will be more robust and interactive than our distance learning model that we had in the spring, distance learning for all. So we've received a lot of feedback on that and are really taking time to do some planning as we move into this. So some key additional features to understand the comprehensive distance learning it includes that we will have interactive daily teacher-student check-ins 5 days a week. So we want to make sure that folks know that our teachers will be checking in with students every day to just see how they're doing, make sure we're on track, what the needs are, and all of those kind of components. This model will include video instruction and interaction with teachers and peers. I know that's a question out there, and this will include that video interaction and also will include recordings within that. So if we do have students that can't log in at the time of the live video session, that they would be able to go back and look at that later so that they could then continue with the work that they need to do. Within this model, students will maintain connection with community schools, teachers, and peers from their home school. So your peers that you've been going to school with, your teachers that have been teaching you in your school buildings, you will maintain connections with most of them that are choosing to stay in the comprehensive distance model. And we will utilize the North Clackamas School District curriculum that's aligned to priority standards. Our teaching and learning department is working very hard on that and making sure that we will be doing professional development with our staff so that we can keep that moving there. In the comprehensive distance learning model, our high school students will maintain access to career and technical education courses at our Sabin-Schellenberg Center. However, I do want to point out that this will be online. And so it's important to know that it will look a little bit different than it normally does. And we know that a key feature of career and technical education is often that students have hands-on learning experiences. And so we are working with our administration and the staff at Sabin-Schellenberg to see how do we make sure that if students need kits at home in order to be able to do the hands-on and follow along with staff, that they have that. Or if it's a place where we cannot do kits at home where they can do that, that we have teachers that will have GoPro cameras mounted to their head where they can show that virtual learning experience. And so kids can see what that looks like, as that's a feature of CTE. In addition, we're really working hard to meet the needs of all of our students and where the entry points are for them, and essentially looking at differentiated learning. And so what do we need to do to support our students to be successful in comprehensive distance learning, as we all know that they will come in from a different place, especially after we just had distance learning for all. In addition, if families who are currently in magnet programs within our district, I want to make sure that you know that we will continue the learning feature of that particular program. So for example, if you are in a dual language immersion program, you will continue to access the language in the learning through the academics. And so just want to make sure that folks know that we are building in those components to the comprehensive distance learning for our magnet program. I do want to direct your attention to, you see a little place up here on this slide on the top right-hand corner. We do have an FAQ on our website, if you go to the front page, that has many questions around comprehensive distance learning. And if you have a particular question, it might give you additional information and answer the question that you have if I have not done so this evening. So in addition to our comprehensive distance learning, I want to share some foundational information around our virtual online program that we are creating. This is a temporary 1-year all online program. And I do want to note, it's important for families to know that if you choose this option, it is a commitment for the entire school year. Students will also be given a laptop if needed. And like the comprehensive distance learning, this option will be more robust and interactive than the distance learning for all model that we had in the spring. One component of this is at this time, we have limited the number to 550 students district-wide. And families, as they make their choice about which option they want, if we have more than 550, we will have to look and see if we're able to accommodate. And if not, we'll be moving into an enrollment lottery for this option. Similar to comprehensive distance learning, this option will also have interactive video lessons and learning with teachers. However, it's important to note that it will require more independent learning for students. So if independent learning is difficult, then we would want to look at comprehensive distance learning for your students. So again, there will be interactive video, interactive learning, but it will require more independent learning. This program will also be made up of teachers and students from a variety of school communities from across our district. So students will not necessarily be with the peers that they've been going to school with or have the same teachers that they may be expected to have in their home high school within this model. The curriculum will be web-based and will be provided predominantly through Edgenuity, but we will be utilizing Odysseyware where it makes sense. We will offer career and technical education courses online through Edgenuity. However, at this time, we're not able to confirm which courses we will be able to offer. We're in a conversation with them, trying to look at what the options are and also looking at how they potentially align to our offerings at Sabin-Schellenberg. And so we will have more information on that next week, and we'll be adding that to the FAQ for virtual online programs as well. In addition, if families are in a magnet program within our district, you will be able to move back into your spot the following year. And I know that that has been a question that has been surfacing for many of our families. You will not be required to take an assessment to get back into the spot that you held prior to moving to the distance online or the online virtual program, if that is a choice. However, it needs to be clear that we will not necessarily be offering the same learning features in the online program. So if we take the same example with our dual language immersion, we will not be having students access instruction through language in the dual language immersion. However, we will do our best to look for opportunities to supplement for our students after school and independently on their own. And so we're looking at a combination of how could we give supports to families where they can try to bolster and beef that up for students, and then where are some places that our staff can come alongside after school and maybe offer optional opportunities for families that are looking for that. So again, here we also have an FAQ specifically on our virtual online program that I would encourage our families to take a look at if you have some additional questions. In all of our models, it's important to note that our middle school and our high school students will continue to have access to their electives. And our elementary students will continue to engage in their specials as well. So kind of the equivalent of what might be an elective in middle and high school, we often call specials at elementary. And so it might look a little bit different, but students will have access. In all of our models that we are building, we will be issuing grades. Students will have grades, more like what we traditionally had prior to the distance learning for all. And in all of our models, our high school students will continue to earn 7 to 8 credits for a year, which is the same as in a typical school year. And all options lead to credit and completion towards the North Clackamas School District diploma. So I'm going to turn our attention a little bit to instructional time. I know there's been a lot of questions about what does the interaction look like between teachers and the applied learning. And this slide does a great job of showing an illustration of this. I want you to pay attention to the greater than or the less than symbols on this slide. So as you see, this is guidance that has come out of the Oregon Department of Education, which is telling us that teacher facilitated time must be greater than or equal to 50% of the instruction time. This includes synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. So video learning, interaction, and independent learning is what that is getting at. When we talk about applied learning, so that's a little bit more of the independent, okay, now we're going to take what was taught by the teacher or what was discussed in the groups and we're going to apply it to the learning. It is less than or equal to 50% of the time. And I want to point out that this could be a 51-49 split, it could be a 60-40 split, but must follow the greater than or the less than as the minimums. Applied learning times include support staff and related service provider things that we need to do with students. And right now what we're looking at in terms of the school schedules is that we would have 4 days a week of instruction and still have the 5 days a week of teacher-student check-in time. So 4 days of instruction, however, we will be checking in with students 5 days a week. During the flex day, where we're looking at the day where we're not having instruction, this would be a time where we'd be looking at other opportunities during this day, such as office hours, planning time, professional development, student supports, IEP meetings, parent connections. This might be a place where we could do some of the optional learning opportunities for kids. And so we're looking at how can we make that day robust for families that would like to take advantage of it, or how to support families if they need that within that time. And so this slide is also out of the Oregon Department of Education guidance and goes into a little bit of detail, a little bit more details that shows you what the premise is for guiding our schools with the school schedule. So here you see the minutes that are the minimum requirements for the daily or the weekly schedule, and gives you a little bit more context of how we're coming up with the schedules that we are. So again, it's the minimums. It's not necessarily what you will see come out, but it does give you some ideas of how that time is looked at per grade level band. And I will say we do have some amazing work groups that have been working all week on our school schedules for elementary and middle and high school. And I know that that is questions that people want to know exactly what that will look like. And I can let you know that that will be shared next week and will be coming out. And so you will be able to see more details, but I think this gives you an idea of what we're looking at.
Thank you, Shay. I want to stop there and provide an opportunity for the board to ask questions regarding the instructional models and the instructional time.
So if you have a question, can you just raise your hand and then I'll start taking note and then I'll call you. Seeing none. You guys are all, oh, okay. Director Strado, and I see you, McVeigh.
My mute. So as far as meeting the minimum hours for the senior class, I would imagine has flexibility because of what's going on. But, you know, you're removing the Friday. So is Friday a planning, meet with parents, meet with students via Zoom? It's just whatever happens kind of day, whatever is needed to happen?
Yes, so and it's not necessarily Fridays. So I want we're currently looking at quite a few different components to see which day of the week. But yes, it would be in relationship to what the needs are of that student and that family and that staff member. So do I need to have an office meeting with a family that's having some difficulties and wants to talk to us about what's going on? Could I attend an IEP meeting that day? Absolutely. Can I participate in an optional cultural event that we'll put on for students? So it will depend on each individual student and family.
Great.
Thank you.
Director McVeigh.
Hi there. Thank you for this. This was a lot. I can't even imagine. And still probably lots of unanswered questions. So my question is, are teachers going to be allowed or encouraged to teach from their classroom so they'll have access to their normal tools that they use in education, familiarity with the classroom, and just an overall connection to student, parent, student, teacher, school?
Shay, I can go ahead and take this one since this was my question I took earlier today with our staff. The simple answer to your question, Tori, is yes. We're currently working on some practices and procedures that will allow our teachers to teach virtually from their classroom, and what that would look like, and how do we maintain that physical distancing in buildings with all of our safety protocols, et cetera. So we're working through that. But we also know that many of our staff potentially fall into an at-risk category or live with a family member who identifies as at risk. And so we're also going to provide the opportunity for our teachers to also teach from home as well, just as many of us across the country in a wide variety of professions have been doing. So I think our teachers will have both options available to them with guidelines, some practices and protocols for each of those models.
And I just have, thank you both for that. And then my follow-up question is, maybe I'm getting it mixed up because even though the asterisk that says a 5-day week, I'm assuming that means 5 days a week a student would have access to a teacher in these calculations, or am I mixing up the 4-day week with a 5-day week in this example?
Yes, they would have access, and also the check-ins and making sure that we're looking at social emotional welfare and mental health for our students, and making sure that they have opportunities for interactions 5 days a week.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I just want to go back to your question, Tori, because directors, just remember there were 4 things that Superintendent Utterback asked us to consider, and one of them was going to be the temporary physical distancing. So Tori, you asked about the building, so we have to consider that and whatever practices they come up with. Other questions from the board? I have one, well, maybe 2. So with all of this information and all of the guidelines, if we find that a student does not do well in this environment, which is not the natural environment of a school system, is the social promotion rules going to be suspended?
Yeah, so the guidance is very clear about holding students harmless in terms of what their particular situations are. And so we have a work group that is looking at how can we support all of the students but particularly how can we support students who might be struggling more than others within this situation. And so how do we reach out? What is their need? What can we do to help engage them differently, or what can we do to remove barriers so that they can engage? And then what do we need to do on the back end for assurance plans that they will be able to enter where they can, and that we're holding them harmless. So.
Great, thank you for that. And then my next question is about screen time, about how much time do students average screen time in in-person instruction? Because I know they use screens in classes. Is it about the same? Is it less? Is it more? Like, what are you thinking?
I think it varies, and I'm not able to give you a specific answer in terms of what does screen time look like when they're in person, and it would look different at different grade levels and for all students, but we can definitely look into that.
Okay, cool. And my last question is about the comprehensive distance learning. We received lots of great emails from many people regarding the comprehensive distance learning and the option for that to be year-round. Is that something that we can consider? Are we considering it? What is going on with that area?
Yeah, Shay, I'll go ahead and answer the question. I think it's a valid question. I appreciate the community reaching out and asking that question. And I'll answer it. I'm going to answer it really without a definitive answer at this point. We're about, 48 to 38 days from opening school. And so we're really concentrating on getting that online program set up, a program right now that has one employee identified in it and no students and no staff right now. And we're also really concentrating on making the comprehensive distance learning model the most robust, effective online program that we can open. It is going to require our teachers to instruct with some different pedagogy and strategies. How you teach in person is not necessarily the most effective way to teach in an online format. And so we've got a lot of work that we need to do. That being said, we have heard parents' desire to keep the comprehensive distance learning option available to them and their student if and when we return to online learning. And I don't have an answer today, and I would hope that I could provide more information to our parents and to the board within the coming weeks. It comes down to issues of staffing, keeping students and teachers together. So we'll weigh those options and continue to examine it. But we've heard from our parents and are committed to looking into that request.
Excellent. And my last comment is I was going through our list of requests for you guys to touch on this time, and you pretty much have gotten through everything. I know that we haven't gotten to logistics left yet, so I won't even go there. But we did ask about parent training and PACE programming. Do we have any updates on that?
So PACE programming, we're definitely in conversations right now with the administration team. They're looking at, what are the needs for our teen parents? How do they best learn? How can we remove barriers and get, help support with online learning? We will have better answers for you next week around that, but it is definitely a high priority and high topic for us there. In terms of parent training, are you talking specifically about technology or the ability to support students academically with content, or both?
I can't remember which one of the directors had this question.
Director Ford, this is Director Benel. It was me my specific question was, yes, how are we supporting those parents to just understand what the options are, to understand we understand that we're going to have families and parents that there's going to be a barrier to understanding what their options are. And once their child is maybe in the comprehensive distance learning, than just understanding the process, understanding the technology, and understanding how to support them at home. So important.
Yeah, super. And do you want to talk a little bit about the first week of school and technology there and how that might also help support?
Yeah, I'm happy to tackle this, and Shay, if you want to add on anything. So there's a couple pieces that are going to happen this week and next week. So tonight, we have asked our principals to send out a letter to their school communities, understanding that it may take a few days. We've got principals that are scheduled to be out this week. And in that communication, we've added another visual document that explains the difference between comprehensive distance learning and the virtual online program. Kind of if it's this in comprehensive distance learning, this is what it looks like in the online program. So we think that will help parents make a decision. And then next Monday at 4 o'clock and next Tuesday at 7 o'clock, we're going to do 2 community forums for our parents. And we'll do it via YouTube. And so that it'll be unlimited access. Again, I will figure out a way to take parent questions, but we'll do a similar presentation to this. Prior to our asking our parents to make a decision on which model they want by the end of the day on Wednesday. And then we will not only will be designing new professional development and training for our teachers on what it's like to teach and work in a synchronous online environment, but we're also going to need to provide some training for our parents as well. And that really is going to be opportunities during that first week. We're first of all going to need to make sure that students have a device, that they have reliable internet access, that they have the applications on their device to make sure that they can access the content and instruction in their teacher. And then we're going to determine what additional training our parents need during that week, and how do we facilitate that training. We also know that we're going to need likely some sort of technology help desk where parents can, at 7 o'clock at night potentially call in and say, we can't get into, such and such a system, and have some experts there that can help do that. And so we want to make sure we have all of those components in place, and I'm guessing there'll be many more that we don't yet know we need as we go through this, but we'll continue to be responsive and build them as we need them.
I would add 2 additional components. We will continue to update our FAQs that are on the website. And we also have one of our departments, instructional services, that is looking at how they can take some of the PowerPoints that we've put together and translate them into other languages so that families can better access, and then looking at where can we have language specific informational sessions so that we can support families and making sure, particularly our bilingual families, where they can have access to the information in language that translates well for them, because this does not always translate well in English, all of this.
I have a couple other questions. I don't know if it's okay right now. Let me know.
Absolutely, Director Benalova, go ahead. I was just going to ask you, does that answer your question?
That does, thank you. What are we going to do? I just have a few questions. What are we going to do? What's the plan with families that do not respond by the 5th at midnight?
Yeah, so we have folks lined up to start making phone calls. We're also not just relying on the form that we're sending out. There will be a text message reminder and poll. I'm not sure how it all works, but families will be able to go in through that way and indicate what their choices are. And then we will also be making phone calls, and that will be for language specific if needed, and a variety. Cindy might be able to talk a little bit more about some of that communication that's coming out, but we will have multiple ways to reach families.
All right, excellent. And did I understand it correctly that if families choose the full year virtual online program, that there will be there's going to be no language component, or are we just talking about, was that being more specific to families that have an immersion program? Can you clarify that for me?
Yeah, so specifically, I was speaking around our magnet program. So our dual immersion being one. I know that that's been a question. So students will have access to world language as it relates to a course that's in Edgenuity or Odysseyware, but in terms of being immersed in the language like our dual magnet programs are, that will look different than it does in the comprehensive distance learning model.
And then is that very clear when we're communicating with those parents that are in an immersion program? Are they understanding that that's not going to be supported if they choose the virtual online program for the whole year?
We are trying to get that information out to folks. So again, as our superintendent said, the information that will be going out from our principals has clear information of what both models look like. In addition, we will be having a dual language immersion meeting for families and parents that need additional questions answered around that and making sure that they understand. So we are looking to make that as clear as possible.
Okay, excellent. And I just have one quick question, because you did mention that teachers are going to be able to teach from school and they could choose to teach from home. Have we identified any tools or things that they're going to be needing at home if they do choose or they do need to teach from home? And what is the budgeting plan? Do we have space in the budget for that?
Yeah, I will go ahead and take that. I think first of all, our teachers did teach online for about 2.5 months, 3 months at the end of the last school year. And so for all of them, they were able to bring materials home, their computers, that sort of thing. We're going to continue to have to make some accommodations as they come up individually. I will say no, we do not in our current budget that you adopted back in June. There was not a line item that you adopted to support materials in classrooms. That being said, materials if folks teach at home. It will be. I will likely say that for some teachers, they're going to need to likely decide, are they going to primarily be at home or are they going to primarily be at school? Hauling materials back and forth probably isn't going to be the most effective model for them, but we'll work with teachers individually and make sure that they have the materials that they need to make sure that they're going to be able to deliver that high quality education that we expect them to deliver.
All right, thank you. And I just had one more quick question, and I don't know if it belongs in this space, so let me know if it doesn't. I'm just wondering what is happening with our alternative programs as far as those students that are placed in alternative programs. How does this overview of the day, and I know that that's probably adjusted based on the program that they're in, but how are alternative programs being affected, and are we still providing transportation? Are some of those programs going to be able to happen at some point? What is the threshold for those?
Can I just ask a clarifying question? Because there is an alternative program that there's a term that the state uses. And so what do you mean by alternative programs?
The alternative placements that we, and for lack of a better word, those alternative placements where we partner with every year, yes. And someone may have a better verbiage than that.
Thank you for the clarity.
Yeah, with the state's new criteria around the health metrics, we do know that all educational programs, maybe with the exception of one county in Eastern Oregon, does not meet the in-person teaching requirements right now. And so all educational programs, particularly in the metro area, where we do send a handful of students to those, will be online starting the school year. And then as those health metrics begin to improve, it will be up to the school districts that those programs are in on whether or not they want to move to those in-person learnings. But I think all of our alternative programs, Gina, are going to need to develop their model initially in an online format.
And are we following up with them as a district since we do send, is there some additional follow-up, I guess is what I'm asking, to find out about their plans for online and how they plan to support our kids that they have?
Looks like Matt is frozen.
I can weigh in there. This is, oh, Matt, you're back.
Yeah, I did not hear the question. Actually, Gina froze on my end. So Tiff, if you want to take it, go ahead.
I can weigh in there. I can give an example of Portland Youth Builders. One of our partners has been in contact and is working, sharing information regularly with Luke Scarpino, who has come here before the board, one of our engagement team leaders. And for instance, they're sharing with us that they're doing online. They're looking at ways to continue their construction strand, even online. They did have some success, some successful outcomes in the spring with GED attainment and with completing the construction strand. So I can give you that one example, for instance. It will be our responsibility, though, to ensure that we're in communication with all of our external placements. Absolutely.
So communication is different than monitoring.
And our responsibility monitoring, for sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Director Benaloga, you good? Perfect. Director Bauer?
Real quick, I just wanted to follow up on a few details, and I really appreciate the staff's work on this and helping parents make that decision. And I know the contrasting the two choices, I think, will really be helpful, and having those meetings next week are great. So I want to really thank you for all of that work. Can you add to that list? I don't think people are realizing too that the comprehensive distance learning is our curriculum. So that does include AP, IB, all of those. But my question is around counselors, mental health access, and I think we may have touched on this 2 weeks ago, and activities. How are those contrasted with the two models? Will there be more counselors available on the comprehensive distance learning? My concern is that the families and the students that are isolated and struggling. So parents and students can help make that decision, what's best.
Yeah, so I will say there will be counseling support on at the virtual online program. It will look a little different than the comprehensive distance learning. There will need to be some synergy and some collaboration between the counselors that are at the home high school and the counselor that's at the online program in terms of, you know, caseloads and all of that kind of components that we're looking at. Right now, one of our large work groups is a work group. Well, we've got two, I would say, that center around this. One's around family engagement and communication, and one's around social emotional learning, trauma-informed care, and mental health resources. And so they are currently in the process of looking at what are all the different components that we can offer to our families within the two models, and how do we make sure that students and families can access that, and that we're also reaching out and following up with that as well. And so we will be able to share additional information on that next week when it comes out. But I can tell you we're looking at it for sure.
I really do appreciate your honest answers and being so transparent. I think that's really important. That we, you know, this is all new. It's all developing. So thank you so much for all the work you're doing. And I just want to remind all of us to be kind and patient.
Thank you.
In these times.
That was perfect. Even though you paused it, it all got out. So that was good. I have one question and then we can move on, Matt. We talked about communication with families before this August 5th date and all these other things that are happening. Is there a way for us to get the prefix for the school just pronounced on the website? Just so folks that may have some anxiety about picking up strange numbers can know that this is the school calling?
I'm not sure I'm understanding the question, Director Ford.
I can answer that.
Okay, go ahead, Cindy.
Unfortunately, we cannot. It is a 1-800 or 888 number or something like that, and we've asked that question before. So the question is, when the text message or the school district sends out an automated phone call, it appears as some unknown number to our families, and they don't answer the phone. So what we've tried to do instead is get the message out. This is the phone number. It's always going to be this phone number, and it could be your child's school or it could be the school district itself calling. Please save this number in your contacts and label it NCSD or Tabitha's school or whatever they want to do so that they'll pick up the phone. So we've gone that route instead.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, I think we're ready to move on.
Excellent. So our next session is around operational and kind of logistics planning. And I'm going to turn it over to Cindy Detchen, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Operations.
There we go. Thank you. In addition to the instructional side of the organization, working on with work groups and creating the blueprint to turn into ODE and also to welcome our students back, albeit virtually, the operations side has also been in work groups and doing a lot of behind the scenes work. These are all of the components that have to be actually written documents, written plans and protocols in place, but most of these are for when we come back to the hybrid model or any kind of a in-person or have people in our buildings. And so physical distancing protocols and hygiene protocols, cleaning, disinfecting, all of those will have to be in place when staff comes back anyway. So we're getting those in our plan now and not waiting until we move to when students return. So all of these things will be available to the public on our website. And they are in, we're about 90% done with all of these. We have things ordered, the disinfecting materials, etc. We have been working with our HVAC technicians to make sure that they are creating the most efficient systems that we possibly can. A specific question that was asked last time, it's a very technical term, and I'll be happy to go offline with this with more detail, but just a quick answer. We do operate at a MERV 8 in our HVAC system, which is what is designed for schools. A MERV 13 is designed for hospitals, and so we do not have the capability in most of our schools to move up to that level, nor would we want to, because it doesn't meet the same needs of having students in classrooms, and some of our schools have windows and whatnot. But I do have a more detailed document to share with the board offline on some of those questions that were asked last time. Enrollment and attendance protocols, this looks different, as you can imagine. How often do I have to log in to be counted in attendance? And if I don't log in for 10 days, do I have a 10-day drop? There are all these rules that we follow in a normal school year, and this is not a normal school year. And so we are looking through all of the guidance, and there is a lot of it, to make sure that we have capabilities to do all of the new procedures and make sure that our kiddos are being counted and are there, and we can communicate to parents when they're not. And we want to make sure we have that information possible for them. We do believe that we have enough devices to supply to any child who needs one. We are ordering more. Some of the CARES funds has been able to support those purchases as well. And we will be launching devices to homes that decide that they would like one and need one in addition to hotspots. Parents do not need to call and ask for those right now. We are not ready to launch that. They want to get a jump on it, and I completely understand that. Or perhaps they have one from the spring that has stopped working, or there's an issue with it. We will be able to swap that out, and parents will be clearly communicated with when that time comes, and make sure that they have the technology needs that to have learning happen for them in their home. Transportation, we have pivoted our work in transportation from figuring out how to socially distance on a bus and create routes that make sense for a hybrid model to supporting nutrition services and creating some cooperation between those two departments to how do we push food and deliver food out to our community. We do need to get some waiver from the state in order to do that, but we have applied and we will be working toward that. But right now, our work with transportation really is on creating a plan, locating best spots to do that. It would not be door to door. That would be an inefficient system, but we can certainly find walking or hubs around our communities that would be within walking distance to support our meal service to our families. Facility use and care programming, those are together because they operate out of one department. Facility use is not happening right now in terms of any rentals. We should not be seeing folks on our fields, but unfortunately people are antsy and want to get out, and they are. And so we just try to very politely remind them that per current governor's orders and the current phase 1 that Clackamas County is under does not permit us to have large groups of people on our fields and using those. And so we're not being punitive, we're not calling police, we're just trying to have conversations when we see them and do that. We certainly are not allowing field use through any kind of a rental agreement. Care, it falls under the daycare guidelines from the state, and we do expect some new guidelines to come out within the next week, which will inform what happens with our care program in the fall. Right now, we are on pause with any kind of a registration until we have further guidance. Extracurricular and athletics is also on pause, but I think we all know it's forthcoming, with the new metrics that have come out, that having any kind of a fall sport would be a very difficult task at this point, but no official guidance or decision yet from the OSAA, but we do expect to hear something fairly soon. Communications, that has come up a few times. I just want to reiterate that we are continuing to send out multiple communications. Families did get an email this week. They had a phone call and they had a text message. Tonight or tomorrow, they're getting an additional letter from their school principal that has some more guidance around the 2 models, as well as a reminder about and an invitation to the parent meetings next week. And Shay mentioned all of the other individual follow-ups that we're having. One other thing that we're doing is that we're taking either this meeting is probably going to be one of the parent meetings next week, and we're going to translate it. And we're doing a voiceover. So all of the comments that are being made, we're going to do a voiceover in both Russian and Spanish by our liaisons, and they'll be pushing that out on Tuesday or Wednesday next week as well. Our HR team is fast underway with working with contract agreements, our association leadership. They've been at the table with each step of the way, wanting to make sure that all of our employees have a voice and representation in this process, and that we're remembering and considering all of those important pieces of input. I missed charter schools. We do have communication, obviously, with our charter schools. They have to turn in their own blueprints. They stand ready to do so. We'll follow a lot of our work, but they also have unique needs and their own boards as well that will continue to make decisions around some of these pieces. Supply purchasing, we have been ordering and procuring items. We will make sure that every staff member, when they return to a building, has access both to a district provided cloth face covering as well as a plastic shield. Their choice to what they use. They could bring their own if they're more comfortable with that. We want to rest assured that our staff does not have to go out and make large purchases to be safe, that we will be providing that, as well as wipes in the classrooms and disinfectant spray, plastic barriers in offices where visitors may be coming. Those are all getting installed as well. In all of these things, you need staff training and professional development. In addition to the large amount of instruction, professional development, and delivering in an online model that our teachers and our instructional assistants will need to have. Every staff is going to have training in making sure they understand about social distancing protocols and they understand the cleaning protocols, and we're working on those trainings. A lot of that could be done online, and then they would complete a course assigned to them after. We do that every year with other things, and so we can add some of those in there. Matt's on mute.
It's on mute.
And I'm also having internet connectivity issues at the moment, so that's not a good thing for the person who's controlling the slideshow. But the other piece I just want to add, at the last board meeting, there was discussion about producing some sort of financial impact report, and we will get that for you probably in September. But there are certainly places in our budget that we did not budget for. Some of this increased costs in technology and personal protection equipment, both for students.
We lost you, Matt.
I think I can fill
Resources.
There you go.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
I don't know how much you heard.
Increased cost in technology.
No, increased cost in technology. And so basically what I will share with you is that probably that first or second board meeting in September, we'll create a document and share it with you in the community of these are some changes that we're going to have to face in our budget due to some increased costs that we didn't foresee when we put the budget together. And here are some places in which there are some savings in our budget because of these delivery models. So that's coming as well. So with that, I'll pause there and see if you have any questions around the operational logistics components.
Again, if you can raise your hand, then I'll line you guys up, and then we can call you out. Any questions?
My question is, hello.
Director Schrader, go ahead.
Thank you. I know you said logistics, but the reference you just made as far as the cost of technology, is some of this technology going to be able to be reimbursed through the E-rate program?
Yeah, we believe so. Potentially 3 sources of dollars. We had the original CARES Act, which we are going to use some money for technology. Then the governor on Tuesday, when she had her last press conference and released the health matrix, also referenced releasing about $28 million, really targeting technology. So we believe we'll be able to access those dollars to purchase some technology. And then we don't yet know where the federal government will land on this additional relief package that Congress is debating. So there is some resources there that were outside of what we initially thought we were going to have from a budgetary standpoint. So great question.
Other questions? I have a question about our staff. We heard about transportation being kind of reimagined and used in a different way this year, and we did receive, I believe, 2 letters from some of our staff that were concerned on their jobs not being applicable during these times, and what are we doing for that? So besides the transportation staff, and it sounds like some of our nutrition staff are being utilized, but other staff that may fall into the category of not particularly being applicable during this time, what are we doing with them?
Yeah, good question. So it's really clear, we have not laid any employees off as of today. And what we're really concentrating on right now is looking at our these 2 instructional models that we're building, and how we will how our staff will support those models. And obviously within the constraints of our budget, and that will have to be taken into consideration. So, moving forward, I think some staff can expect to have their duties look a little bit different in the coming year. And we may be having conversations regarding layoffs, but right now we're really looking at our current staff. What do we need in these new instructional models, figuring that out, and then we would move into conversations, should we need to, regarding furloughs and layoffs.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And I just want to say, we had 16 things that we had asked you guys to come back with, and all 16 have been met. So we appreciate you and all the work that you guys doing. And beyond that, I mean, those are just 16 things from the last meeting that we asked you guys to include now. So thank you for doing that work. And we still have more to do. But you guys are really chugging along. It's a lot. It's just a lot, but a great lesson for our community and our kids in how to deal with uncertainty, because it comes to everybody. So good work.
Thank you. Just the two final quick slides here, I think. Some upcoming communications. I think we've referenced all of those thus far tonight. Again, just really encourage folks and the board to go to that district website, look at the resources that are on there. Those FAQs will continue to be updated pretty regularly. We are going to start pushing out again our HR staff and FAQ to our staff. All kinds of issues around leaves and working conditions that are changing, and we'll need guidance there. Here is the information for the community forums next week. And then just want to talk a little bit before we end tonight, our school calendars. This is one of the four.
I'm sorry, Matt, I just have one more thing to add to this slide there that Cindy brought up on that recap slide, and that was technology patience. So parents, we know you're anxious to get your technology, but we're asking that you're patient so that we can do it in the most efficient way.
Thank you. Thank you. One of the four items in my recommendation is to allow me some flexibility to adjust the calendars moving forward, and knowing that I would need to come back to you within 30 days of doing that. I really don't anticipate us changing the start times or the.
We lost you. Matt, you're gone. We don't hear you. Hey, Matt, don't hear you.
Negotiations with our employee groups.
Oh, now we hear you.
I'm sorry.
The last thing was about the returning in 30 days on the schedule.
The flexibility.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. And so there's going to be a need, I believe, in the coming month for me and HR staff to enter into negotiations with our employee groups regarding adjustments to our calendars. Not around vacations, not around the start and end dates of the school year, but looking at some of those work days, some of those professional development days may need to shift based on the model that we select. So I'm asking for your permission to be able to do that, what is going to be under a short time frame, and then bring those changes back to you. Okay. And I believe we've covered the rest of the information on that slide. So next steps, further updates for our parents and staff coming up. We've talked about those as well. Ultimately, our plan submitted to the Oregon Department of Education by August 15th. And with that, if there are any closing comments that board members have or any final questions, I'm going to stop talking because it's not going well.
Just quick question before directors ask questions and make comments. You had 4 things that you needed us to approve for. Do we need to do that officially, or are you just asking for consensus?
Yeah, I will work with board chairs next week at our meeting to see how we want to address that. I don't need anything tonight, okay. But maybe some board action on the August 13th meeting.
Excellent. All right, anyone have any comments or questions? Would you like me to do a roll call so we get everybody in? Okay, I will do that. Director Bauer.
Thank you again for all the hard work. And I wanted to acknowledge the letters that we've gotten from parents and staff. It helps us to understand the needs of our community. So I just want to put that out there. But also, again, thank you. I know that staff has individually met with lots of groups. The PCLA met this weekend, and you hear us. I mean, I see that reflected. So I think that's all I have. You answered all my questions, and board members, you asked great questions. You asked some of the ones I had on my mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Bauer. Director McVeigh.
Thank you. I'll be quick. 2 things. One, I don't know if we've already done this. I could take a look, but do we have resources on the website for parents who are going to very much struggle with daycare come fall? Both the ones that utilize NCSD and maybe those that didn't, but now we'll need to find other resources. And then just, I've heard from a few parents on if the district is thinking of anything creativity wise for, to get their kids out and getting them some organized exercise when they return from work, evening stuff that they can social distance, whether it's organized walking or running on the track, stuff that, again, with social distancing in mind, but something that they can maybe bring their kids to a campus or a high school. And maybe it's first come, first serve. Maybe the first 100 can do it, and something creativity. So something just to keep in mind. But I'm more concerned about parents and daycare.
I can take that initially. We are waiting for the child care guidance. We really don't know what's out there yet and what is up and running. So, but we have been pushing folks to look at the 211. You can either text 211 or you can get on the 211 website. And that is a statewide organization that helps you find services in your area. Once we have more information in our area, we can certainly do that. We do have a standing work group that has gathered a variety of stakeholders, both providers, experts in the field, county representatives, and some parent representatives as well, to try to help facilitate conversations in the community, to stand up some co-ops or to help people find a way to connect with each other, those parents who have to work and can find a local parent who is willing to take 3 to 4 or 5 in a small cohort. We can't sponsor those, but we can certainly help connect people, and that's what we're trying to do. The other thing I would say we have done is we've run a virtual summer camp for our summer care program. It's free, and parents do get students get weekly assignments who've signed up for that. And they've been fun. They're sending in videos, they're doing all kinds of things, getting outside as part of those activities that we ask them to do. We have not organized group ones to meet in a certain place, but I could certainly see, I will say there's some silver lining to this. We are seeing some community groups rise up and figure out how to help each other. Director Perez said at our last meeting, it takes a village, and we're starting to see some people really come forward, and it'll be exciting to see what comes out of this.
Thank you, Cindy. I think Director Perez says that every meeting. Just so one clarity on the 211 call for all of our families listening, you must be humble and tell the truth, because that phone line can only help you as much as you give information for, and they will ask you difficult questions, and I entrust in the questions and answer them truthfully so you can get the resources that you deserve, but you got to tell the truth. All right, Director Benaloga.
Yes, thank you. I also want to just thank the district for all of the work. This is a tremendous undertaking, and the care and respect that you're showing the staff and our community is definitely felt through our community. And one thing I will say, I am also very proud of our community for engaging, for respectfully engaging, for opening those great conversations, because it does take a village, and we all need to realize that we're a big part of that. I did just have a little bit of a question, and then I want to clarify for the community. So have we, as a district, have you made a decision as to how or if and the IAs are going to be, instructional assistants will be utilized?
So I can attempt to answer that. Currently, we are looking at how our instructional assistants will be utilized in comprehensive distance learning. We know in many cases that many of our instructional assistants are the front line communication and the trusted adult between our schools and our families. And so we are looking at them for engagement and connection, two-way communication. They will be supporting small group breakout work in the comprehensive distance model, and also be looking to them to be on the front line and help identify when students and families need some support around social emotional learnings, mental health supports, and then working with us to identify how we can accommodate and remove barriers with with that. In addition, they might be supporting us with supply needs, particularly for our students with disabilities or our students that are in the primary grades, such as K2, and making sure that students have what they need in terms of for that. So, and there will be many other things as well, but those are some of the things that we're looking at.
All right, excellent. Thank you for that. And then I think we need to clarify for community. Last spring, the governor directed that all staff needed to be paid, correct? So, and is that, can we clarify for the community if that is the case moving forward in the fall?
No, we are not required to pay all staff this year.
Okay.
That is not part of the guidance. Obviously, we are going to pay all staff that are working their hours, but we do, school districts do have the ability to furlough and or lay off staff if we determine that that's a need that the district has.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. And again, thank you for just a robust, respectful conversation. I appreciate it, and I appreciate all the time that the whole team has put into this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Penaloga. Director Schrader, what you got for us?
It's just more comments. You know, everything changes frequently. And the concerns, I would say, would be, you know, I hear MERV 8 versus MERV 13, MERV 13 being for hospitals. But if we at least, at minimum, understand what it would cost and or what would it do, or so if we had to think backwards as far as, oh, we're coming back to in-person in November, and the recommendation now is MERV 13, which is not currently recommendations. What would it take for us to do such? And as far as everything else, you know, it's a dynamically moving object, and you know, there seems to be a lot of emails, requests for the CDL, and so, you know, with the limited number of seats for that, what would be the costs for cloning a virtual machine and bringing on additional capabilities? But again, that we would know that months before we get there. As far as if the pandemic grows, we will have to be more creative with options. But staff, thank you. And thank you for the future work as well.
Thank you. Director Way?
Yes, thank you. I also want to appreciate the staff for putting together all types of different scenarios and planning for a future that is, we will wait and see. We will try our best to provide the best high quality education as possible for all of our students in the district. You know, I think just my main comment and one of my main concerns is around the enrollment and attendance piece. And I just don't want us to, you know, create unnecessary, you know, barriers or challenges for families or students that already sort of struggle in that area for whatever reason, you know, even in a traditional school year. I think the same goes for, you know, some of the disciplinary, you know, actions that we may do, again, in a traditional school setting. I think all just to say that I think I really want us to continue to remind ourselves to use an equity lens, you know, because whatever situation we're going to have to address with students, whether it's their attendance or behavior, all of that is just going to continue to be, I think, that much more intense and magnified, you know, in an online format. So I just really want us to make sure that we are, again, not continuing to, you know, perpetuate, right, disparities, you know, for students in our district. And I know that we've done, and I think we've done fairly well around increasing, you know, making sure that students are, you know, not being absent over the last couple of years, obviously making sure that more students of color are graduating on time. But I just want us to remember that in an online format, it's just going to be just a different environment. And I want to make sure that we, again, are making sure that all of our students have the opportunity to be successful and achieve. But thank you again for all of your work. I think this is great, and I look forward to what the next couple of months of additional planning will look like.
Great. So I will just reiterate what everyone said. You guys are doing incredible work. This is a tough time for our entire world. Uncertainty is not something that we ever look forward to. There's a really important quote from Mandy Hale that I love, and it's trust the wait. You know, embrace the uncertainty, because enjoying what is to come and the becoming of the uncertainty is really what we can look forward to. I think there's a lot of discussion out there on what children will not have. We need to talk about what children will have. This is a unique time where we actually get to create something that is aligned with each individual child. We rarely have that opportunity. And it's a beautiful time for us to take uncertainty and see what's possible. I believe that if you have breath, then you have possibility of doing something. And I believe every child has the ability to be successful in all environments. And so we have to think first of what we do have. There will be challenges, no doubt. There will be difficulties, no doubt. But there's a lot that we do have in this district that is right. And I think there's very caring adults in the system that really want to see people succeed. And it only takes one caring adult, y'all, to make a successful child. So I just applaud you guys. This is hard stuff, and you guys have presented it with grace and succinct. There's still a lot of questions, but we're going to keep this moving forward. Matt, do you have anything else?
I just wish everyone a great night, and Libra, I appreciate those closing comments. We do need to, I think, shift our mindsets from some of the challenges we face to the opportunities that we have to create, I think, some amazing opportunities for our kids.
Yeah.
Thank you for your words.
Cool. Well, it's 9:01. With that, I adjourn this meeting.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Night.